Hi guys, welcome back to the BMW Guy channel, and today we're going to be taking a look at some myths to do with BMWs. So we're going to cover everything from myths about their history to myths about ownership, myths about the drivers, etc. Because I'm sure you've heard a fair few myths about how they're ridiculously expensive to maintain, how BMWs are unreliable, and everyone seems to know everything about BMWs and a lot of them have actually never owned them. So yeah, today we're going to be taking a look at some myths to do with the car. So the first one I'm going to address is that the cars are ridiculously expensive to maintain, and this can be the case on poorly maintained cars. If you take, for example, this car in front of me, I know it's the cheapest BMW model, as it were, the 1 Series, but this can cost you between £200 to £400 for a service, which compared to a Toyota of the same era is a bit more expensive. However, like everything, you can do it for so much cheaper. So for example, I serviced this myself for instance sum of about £100, which is far cheaper than any sort of dealer would ever do. So it's sort of one of those things, it's what you make of it. Obviously there are going to be more expense to do with the expensive cars like M3s, etc. They aren't going to be as cheap as this to maintain, but again, there are avenues to do it on much less of a budget. I think the tradition, the myth sort of comes from the fact that BMW's dealers do like to put prices up. So that's where it's come from, but I can safely say, as a BMW owner, and as you may have seen, we've owned every generation of the BMW 1 Series now, apart from the first one. We've also got an X3, and I've had experience with the E46 generation BMWs. I've driven a fair few of them, and I can safely say that they have been reliable, hence why the police use the 330D Tourings, and they've used BMWs for years now and safely get well over 100,000 miles out of them with no issues whatsoever. The second one is going to be that they're unreliable. So like every manufacturer, there are some unreliable cars. Perhaps the most famous is the E60 M5, or the E61 M5 with V10, which is known for basically smashing up his own engine with the rod bearings failing. But again, this is something that can be addressed. Yes, there were issues from factory, but if you actually look at how many of these actually happen, I think it's more one of those things online that's far more over dramatized than it ever actually occurs, if you know what I mean. This car here has been one of the most reliable cars we've ever had. We've only had a few issues, but they're to be expected. We've never had any other issues with our other BMW 1 Series. We had one where the Lambda went, which was a F21. It was an F21 facelift model, but apart from that, we've never had any issues with any of our BMWs. Touch wood, that is. So to say that a BMW is unreliable is like saying that, it's essentially, and you could say that about any car. So yeah. Next, we're going to be taking a look at sort of the history of BMW, and more in particular, the badge. So a lot of people think that this badge is sort of paying homage to BMW's aviation roots, because BMW actually started by making airplanes in the war. This actually isn't true at all. Most people say it's a spinning propeller, but what it actually is part of the crest from one of the founding companies of BMW, which is Rapp Motorworks, which were again based in Bavaria, and they sort of sported this, what looks like the spinning propeller in their crest. So BMW decided to take it and use it to pay homage to them. Another thing to do with BMW's history is more to do with the fact that actually they came from aviation, and what it was is the Versailles Treaty, which sort of saw the end of the World War One, meant that BMW had all this production power but sort of no capacity to use it anymore. No one was buying aeroplanes, so what they decided to do was go into the motor car and go into sort of just motor vehicles in general. They also started making motorcycles, and actually in 1937 BMW produced the world's fastest motorcycle. So it's just another quick fact there. Yeah, so And actually, they didn't even design the first car that they produced. I can't remember who designed it now. It was just like an old coach builder from back in the day. But yeah, it's an interesting history of BMW, and that sort of ties into the next one. Is that the 4-cylinder BMWs aren't real BMWs? So we get this a lot now. There's sort of a sense of people think that if your BMW isn't a V8, a straight 6, a V10 or anything like that, it's not a real BMW. I've heard that a few times with this. Obviously it's a 2-litre 4-cylinder diesel, but the actual fact is that the E30 M3 is a 4-cylinder, which is widely regarded as the best M car ever. And BMW's factory is actually designed to look like a 4-cylinder engine, and this is because all of their cars were essentially 4 cylinders until the sort of late 70s. So for people to say that a 4-cylinder BMW isn't a real BMW is a load of rubbish, really. So yeah, there's quite a few. If you're interested in sort of the history of BMW, there's quite a few interesting places to find out. There's lots of myths about BMW's history. There is actually another. I'll just do a quick thing and let you know about the history of BMW. The Red Baron actually used only BMW parts on his airplane. And if you don't know who the Red Baron was, he was one of the greatest German fighter pilots in existence. He was in the First World War, and I think he is the most famous and most acclaimed fighter pilot sort of in the history of the world wars. So for him to be using these parts, not these parts on this car, but parts from BMW, really says something about the quality of the parts. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.